Hello everyone, I'm basically back to do part two, Germany 1819 to 1945, Democracy and Dictatorship. So the exam's tomorrow, so let's get started. Basically, let's remember that the exam is made up of three parts. That's Germany and the growth of democracy. We talked about that. We talked about how ultimately 1929 has destroyed that democracy, and we're going to look at that in more detail now. And ultimately, that's what part two is about. So there's a guaranteed question, remember, on part two, which is Germany and the Depression, its impact, the growth of the Nazi Party, rise of extremism, and then of course there's part three, which I probably won't get a video around for today. So 1929 hits. Germany has just been going through that golden age, 1923 to 1929, where it was great. Things were coming back, they're getting back on their feet again. But the Wall Street crash basically destroys that economic prosperity across the world, but especially Germany, who is so reliant on the American Dawes and Young plan, in particular the loans, the Ford and Gillette factory, all of that, not to mention the loans, which the loans essentially are no longer being given, thus Germany can't afford all the things it's been doing. It has to now pay the reparations out of its own pockets. I mean, has all these bills to pay, but no loans. And America, of course, is saying, give us our money back. So what happens? Well, number one, people start to get fired, and that is always the working class and the middle class. They start to lose their jobs. The middle class, in particular, start to, of course, lose their savings. There's a specific there. Now, with both of them, they're going, what the hell? We've gone through this before post war. We've gone through this before in 1923 of hyperinflation. Again, this new democratic government, Weimar, has destroyed it, has ruined it. They're not going, oh, it's the American stock market. They're going, no, it's Weimar. They're being blamed. And so many working class Germans are no longer trusting in that socialist SPD Weimar government. They're turning to the promises of extremist parties who say break Treaty of Versailles, or the Communist Party who is saying, yeah, equality, eat the rich, etc., i.e., it's not your fault. Let's just take the money from the wealthy. That means, of course, the upper class are terrified of a communist uprising. They're terrified of a communist uprising in Germany, and they are looking to someone to protect them, politically speaking. And they don't really care who it is. They're terrified of seeing the scenes of 1917 Russian Revolution happening to them. Farmers are also fearful of communism because their private property will be taken from them. Women and children, they're just struggling because they're the ones who always struggle the most in these situations. Minorities, ditto, they're the first to be fired. And the ex military, they're angry. They're seeing it again, this again, Weimar Germany. They are embarrassing their country. Their pride is once again in the gutter. And you see in the pictures there, the top left, you've got the soup kitchens, you've got these posters from the time of the Nazi Party and the Communist Party basically saying, stand up, we will help you. And you know what? All those unemployed men, potentially ex soldiers as well, joining groups like the SA because it gives them something to do. They're all unemployed. It gives them something to do, somewhere to go. It gives them soup for the day, soup and bread, as long as you just come and listen to the party slogans. Now, think about this, what the reality is. So, you got a wonderful picture of all the KPD, that's the Communist Party, and basically what's going on? Well, they have to pay the reparations, they have to pay the loans back. 6 million people in total get unemployed, or between 5 and 6, and then inflation, not hyperinflation, but inflation. So those savings are being lost again. Socially, you got the people divided between those who are like, no, look, this democracy can work, give it time, it's still new, and those who are going, I missed the good old Kaiser days where we knew what was going on. And people are hungry, they're starving, they're, as I said, going through soup kitchens. As long as you listen to the political messages, they are also angry about that repeated lost pride. I'm not just talking about the ex military, everyone. So these are some social factors of how it impacted people. And of course, the rise of extremism, which in this case, not political, but basically people are divided. There's fighting on the streets, i.e., between the different ideologies, but also just the anger and all the violence that goes with it. And of course, fear of the instability. Politically, of course, the Weimar government can't pass any laws because it isn't able to have a majority. They aren't able to pass laws, and therefore they can't solve the situation. So it's just instability, there's chaos, there's deadlock. And why? Because of proportional, excuse me, proportional representation. And as the elections happen, the extremists start to get in. As the working class, the middle class, and upper class start to vote for them. And you see there in the top right a picture of Hitler eventually becoming chancellor. Now let's just look quickly at these elections. What happens? Well, first of all, in 1930, after the Wall Street crash, there's an election by Brüning. What we see there is that massive rise of extremist parties getting votes in the Reichstag. Remember, you need a big majority and coalition partners because it's proportional. 1932, because there's basically no solution, another election, this time by von Papen, and you know what? Just 2 years later, a massive Nazi majority. And in theory, Hindenburg should make Hitler chancellor to give him a chance to form government as the biggest party. But he's like, no way am I going to trust this guy. Hindenburg does not rate Hitler. He doesn't want to do it. Same year, because no government can be formed, there's another election. Nazis again have the majority, i.e. the most, but they lose a few seats. Nothing massive, but they are, you know what, there's little signs saying, you know what, maybe that they've hit their peak. Maybe things are slowly starting to get better. Unemployment's slowly dropping. Maybe. But essentially, the problem is Hitler and the Nazis and the communists, they're like, no, we're not making deals. We're not making, we're going to help form a government. So no government can be formed. Hindenburg says to von Schliessen now, look, I've tried Brüning, I've tried von Papen. You give it a go, form a government. He can't. And finally, that's when Hindenburg turns to Hitler and says, fine, you do it. And he's made chancellor in 1933, which is why you got to remember that date. 1929, Wall Street crash. 1933, Hitler's in charge. Now, he is just chancellor at this point. He's just a democratically elected chancellor. Remember, he went to prison after the Munich Putsch and said, we're not going to do it violently. We're going to get in legally. We're going to win the election. Well, he did. So how does he go from being chancellor to authoritarian to dictator? And the answer is these 3 steps. So the first thing that happens is the Reichstag catches fire and a communist is blamed. This means all those people who were fearful of the communists are now in extreme fear. They think this is a signal. They think, oh my God, now it's going to happen at any moment now. Hitler uses that fear and says to the Reichstag, not the communists who are now banned, give me the power to act quickly, forget this proportional nonsense, give me the power to act quickly, just like the Kaiser, and essentially they pass the Enabling Act. And what that means is he can pass laws without the Reichstag. They do it because they're scared of revolution. They're all going to get murdered in their beds by communists. And you know what? Hitler uses that power straight away. He sets up the Gestapo, concentration camps. He takes over the media, censorship, all of that stuff. And now he's authoritarian, just like the Kaiser, because he doesn't have to talk to the Reichstag. Then, of course, how does he become dictator? And it is a couple of years later with the Night of the Long Knives, which is this kind of 2-for-1 for him. Number one, Hitler's in charge, and he's looking around the Nazi party going, right, who are my rivals? Röhm, the leader of the SA, is a massive rival because Röhm basically is like, Hitler's a madman. He's not that strong. I'm the tough guy. I'll take over and I'll make it a militaristic Germany again. Kind of like Cap, if you think about it. But here's the thing. The armies see the SA and they're like, these guys are in uniform, they're ex-military, they're just basically paramilitary. They're just, I don't know what they are, but we don't like them. And so they sort of say to Hitler, look, we like what you stand for stability, anti-communist, we like the anti-Treaty of Versailles, you're one of us, he's a corporal, don't forget. Yeah, he's low ranking, but ultimately he is talking good stuff about the German army. So they say to him, look, we don't trust the SA. So Hitler takes out Röhm using the SS for the first time. Röhm, the leadership of the SA, and others. This is the thing. Don't forget, it wasn't just the SA being killed. It was political opponents. Remember, Von Kahr, all the way who stopped him in the Munich Putsch, he is chopped to death with axes in the woods. It is all the sort of potential opponents from the SPD party, all of these different people who are murdered essentially on the Night of the Long Knives, which removes all political opponents to Hitler within the Nazi party and outside of it. And he gets up and he says, I killed these people. I ordered their deaths without trial or jury. And that is when people realize, oh dear, what have we done? And they're now not afraid of a communist, they're afraid of Hitler, who's just murdered a bunch of people and no one is willing to say anything. And of course, the army, they've given their oath of loyalty. So that is part two. The rest of it, part three, is all about life under the Nazis. So let's just stop and look at some exam questions. Back to the interpretation here. And ultimately, how is it different about his appeal? So the classic question for part two is, why did the Nazi party grow? Which one's positive? Which one's negative? Look here. He was reasonable. He wasn't a shrieking fanatic. He was actually spoke passionately, hypnotic, persuasive. He was anti-communist. Now, ultimately, he's saying he's a good speaker. Second one says, no, it was the 1929 Great Wall Street crash. So basically, how are they different? One says it was because of what he did. The second says because of what was going on. Why are they different? The first one's by a Nazi well after the thing, and basically he's in jail for being a Nazi and supporting Hitler. So he's saying, I supported him because he made a lot of sense. He was very, not encouraging, he was very persuasive. The second one, where's it by? It's Victor Schiff. Don't forget to say the name. Post-war, and who is he? A socialist. So basically, he is going to be anti-Hitler to begin with. So he's kind of explaining why Germans chose this guy. Now, then think about convincing. You got loads of information there, all the different bits and pieces, which comes down to why did the Nazi party grow? And just remember what I was saying. Working class turned to extremes because they disappointed the SPD and their economic plight. Then you got the middle class who again have been let down by the SPD. They lost all their savings and they're basically just like, again, this democracy is not working. Upper class fear of communism. Women, Christians, all these groups, all of them you can say traditional attitudes. So what does the source hint at versus what your own knowledge is? Now let's have a look at three questions only, because again, it's a kind of small section of the course, and essentially impact on the people. We've covered that. It's point evidence, point evidence. Look for the different types of Germans, the working class, the middle class, the upper class, and it's that point of don't just repeat, because then you're not really expanding your argument, i.e., no jobs, no savings, etc. Focus on the economic impact and the political impact, i.e., massive unemployment, 6 million, Ford and Gillette closing, politically rise of extremists, and don't say just the Nazis, include the communists, because they were there. Now, how did the Enabling Act allow him to become the Fuhrer? Ultimately, and this is the trick one, this is the classic question. How did he, get in charge? Basically, it's those three steps: feel Reichstag, feel communism. It's the authoritarianism of the Enabling Act, and it is the fear from the Night of the Long Knives. The classic other question for the 12 marker here is, well, did Hitler win through what he did, i.e., massively organized, Nazi party headquarter in every state? He flew all around Germany in that aeroplane. Postcards, a very savvy campaign, very modern. You also had the postcards, don't forget, of showing Hitler as a normal guy. And of course, Goebbels propaganda, posters everywhere. The fantastic oratory, eloquent, passionate, charismatic Hitler speeches. The fact he was one of them, an Iron Cross winner, a ex-soldier, war hero. Don't forget also you've got things like the language they used. I break Treaty of Versailles. Forget the anti-Semitism stuff. That wasn't such a big thing. It was basically we Germans are not to blame. We were betrayed. We can be great again. We'll break the Treaty of Versailles. make Germany great, Lebensraum, Volksdeutsch. And then when it comes to traditional values, go with Kinder, Kultur, Ketscher. Basically, I believe in looking after our children. I believe in the traditional household, all of this stuff, and religion, respect, etc. So versus was it the Wall Street crash, where basically people only voted for extremists because they're poor? Ultimately, the answer is, well, Hitler only did well during the economic recession. Before that, he was doing all those things I've already said, but he wasn't doing well. Now, the point you make is if he hadn't done those things, he never would have gotten to power, but he never would have gone, those things never would have worked really well if it wasn't for the rise of extremism from the 1929 Great Depression. Another interpretation, how are they different? Look at the first one. It says here, Van der Lubbe started a fire on his own. It says he confessed. So that one basically says it was the communists. Second one, Goering says he confesses. So how are they different? One saying the communists did it, one said the Nazi did it. Don't forget the word differ. Why? Why are they different? One's a Nazi. The other one is post-war, basically saying, I'll tell you what really happened. Own knowledge. There's not much really to add there, but basically you just say, look, on the one hand, it allowed them to do all these different things. We know that it was suggested this. It is, this one in particular is a tricky one. So you just got to basically throw everything you know about it at it. Obviously, this one's not coming up.